I'm Amrit of 12th A, and I closely follow all the political developments across the country and all the blame game politics and the vote bank politics that exists in India. Now, coming to my question, you have advocated minority rights, the rights for the suppressed, the oppressed, the marginalized. And you have also watched closely the emergence of the capitalism, the ruthless, aggressive capitalism in our country. How did your personality evolve as an advocate of minority rights? Do you think the Dalits and the other minorities are still oppressed and suppressed in our country even after 70 years of independence? And do you think politics has got something to do with this? Thank you, sir.
In fact, anyone who is living with open eyes in India will have noticed how even today the caste system, which is one of the worst products of Indian social engineering, maybe, has survived, and how the people of the so-called low caste, I personally do not believe in high caste or low caste, the so-called lower caste are continuously oppressed in days. You keep finding Dalits, for example, getting lynched, Muslims getting lynched or killed. We found so many churches attacked in the last, 4 years particularly, and even before that it had begun. Many churches were attacked. You may remember the incident in Orissa and quite a few other places in India. I know because I live in Delhi, and in Delhi also, in a place called Dilshad Garden, a church was completely attacked and demolished. Priests being attacked. So and this is the state of almost all the minorities in India, which means that it becomes one's primary mission and duty to stand with those who are oppressed. And today, one of the most oppressed sections happens to be, the minority. It could be a religious minority. It could be a racial minority. Look at the state of the Adivasis. You know how a tribal young man was just lynched. He was just killed because they said he had stolen something for which they had absolutely no proof. And so you find that the tribal people, the Dalits, and those who belong to the minority religions, the Parsis, the Christians, the Muslims, a lot of them being continuously attacked, false pretexts. They may say that a particular kind of food is not allowed. For example, beef, you very well know that. And even Gandhi had a very different position on that. Gandhi was a non-violent person and he was a complete vegetarian. But he said, if a people have been taking beef or whatever meat for centuries, and if it is part of their tradition and part of their routine, they should be allowed to continue that. Gandhi had explicitly stated that, despite his vegetarianism and his commitment to non-violence. So, but then some people today speak against eating beef or eating certain kinds of food. So which is ultimately a kind of suppression of one of the basic freedoms guaranteed by the Constitution. So I wouldn't ask you to go beyond the Constitution, because today our Constitution is to be protected like a holy book. I mean, with the same kind of reverence that you have, say, for the Holy Quran or for the Holy Bible or for Bhagavad Gita or whatever holy book, you have to treat the Constitution. Because it is this Constitution that has made us the freed citizens of India, who can speak freely, discuss things freely, enter into open dialogues, and freely express our opinions in the social media or in the mainstream media. It has given us the freedom to organize. It has given us the freedom to propagate our religion without using violent means. So it has given us all the basic freedoms which have made us a strong and civilized country. And if somebody is questioning these freedoms, It means he or she is questioning the base, the very fundamentals, the very basics of our constitution. And so it is necessary today for us to defend our constitution, and in the name of our constitution also to defend all those who are being oppressed in various ways. The poor people, the people who are completely deprived of not only wealth but of any kind of education and culture, the people who belong to the various minority religions and tribes and races, and all those, and even writers and intellectuals who freely try to express their opinions. They are not often allowed to. You know how Kalburgi was killed, or Pansare was killed, or Gauri Lankesh was murdered, or Thabolkar was killed. One was a rationalist, one was a Gandhian, one was a spiritualist, Kalburgi, who was a friend of mine, and Gauri Lankesh was a free journalist. And so you find that people who belong to various streams of thinking and streams of action are being simply murdered because they dared to speak. They dared to speak truth. And the fundamental function of a journalist or a creative writer is, briefly put, to speak truth to power. To speak truth to power. And all great writers, great intellectuals, great journalists, great thinkers have done this. They have not been afraid of power. Right from Jesus Christ to Socrates to the intellectuals of our times, every honest intellectual has shown the courage to stand up against power. And for that, they have been tortured, they have been imprisoned, they have been shot dead, but still they stood. They stood up for truth, and they spoke. They told the truth to power, telling them, "You are doing wrong. This is not what you should be doing. This is not how you should be ruling the country." So we should develop that kind of courage, what Gandhi called the moral courage, to question all these irregularities, all these unconstitutional things that are being perpetrated around the country, and all that is being done, all the violence that is being done in the name of caste or gender or religion or race. And that's why in my short speech, I don't know whether it was short really, I spoke fundamentally against violence, the various kinds of violence of our time. So to speak against violence and to act against violence, as Gandhi would say, and that has become extremely important in our time. Yes, the institutions that you spoke of have unfortunately survived, which should not have survived, but all the discrimination, we have not been able to get rid of this discrimination over 7 decades of independence, and it is our duty, it is your duty, it is the duty of the coming generations to eradicate these institutions of inequality and to create a society where human beings are treated as human beings and not as someone who belongs to a particular religion or a particular caste or a particular race or speaking a particular language.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm Bharat of class 12. Intolerance is a word that has been used in India so often that now it's considered cliche. And numerous examples account to this, including the Gauri Lankesh case. So as future citizens, how could we wipe out this scenario?
Intolerance as a word might have become a cliche, but sadly intolerance in action is still very much an alive and meaningful word. And I would say, I would qualify it a bit. There is positive intolerance and there is negative intolerance. By positive intolerance, I mean being intolerant towards injustice, being intolerant towards non-violence, being intolerant towards the suppression of freedom. And by negative intolerance, I would say not tolerating freedom, not tolerating opposition or dissent, not tolerating intellectual integrity. Well, that is perhaps a negative intolerance. That is, if you belong to a religion, if you oppose all other religions and say that your religion is the greatest and only possible religion through which you will get salvation, there is negative intolerance there. Because there are so many ways in which man can believe, man can practice religion, and we should accept all of them as different ways, maybe to attain the same kind of goal. So if somebody preaches that this is the only religion through which you will get salvation, whether it be a sannyasin or a Christian priest or a Muslim priest, there is something wrong there. Because which means, well, you have only one way to reach God. No. God has not prescribed any particular way to reach Him. Maybe truth is one way to reach Him. Maybe even a non-believer. I mean, I think even God would allow, that is why there are non-believers also in the world. God would allow even non-believers to attain salvation if they have lived a good life, a positive life, a life in truth and a life for truth. So ultimately, we need to fight all kinds of bad intolerance. And so, in another sense, we should be intolerant towards intolerance.
Good morning, sir. I am Naveen Prasad Alex from class 12. The work of certain writers in some languages like Urdu have been removed from the syllabus in certain states. How do you think it would impact a writer or a poet in such a situation?
Well, Urdu is in fact a common Indian heritage. It is one of the major languages of India, produced because of our interaction, especially with the Persian language. And Urdu has produced some of our best writers, as you very well know, Saadat Hasan Manto, for example, or Kishan Chandar, or Rajinder Singh Bedi, some of our best, or Kurutulin Haidar, Ismat Chugtai, name them, and some of our best writers have come from Urdu. And so I do not think it is proper for anyone to think that it is wrong on the part of anybody, especially on the part of women, to express anything in Urdu. So it is to be seen not as an attack on Urdu alone, but as an attack ultimately on the freedom of expression, on the language you use. And Urdu writers have challenged. Ismat Chugtai, for example, was a very, very radical writer. When she spoke about things about which nobody had spoken till her time, you know. She was perhaps the first to write a story about, first to do gay writing in India. She has a story called The Bed, which is a lesbian story. So Urdu writers have been extremely free and have expressed themselves without inhibition. And if that tradition is coming to an end, there is a problem there. But it is happening not only to Urdu, in fact. Perumal Murugan was a Tamil writer, not an Urdu writer. But he was not, because he was making a reference to certain customs that existed 50 years back. And he said that it existed 50 years back. He did not say it is existing now. But even then he was attacked and silenced for quite a while. And finally the court had to intervene and tell him, no, you should continue writing. And that is an extremely important judgment of our time. Like the judgment on privacy from the Supreme Court. This was also an extremely important judgment from the Madras High Court, which said, well, if you don't like a piece of writing, if you don't like a book, don't read it. Throw it away. But don't say that others should not read it. It is their freedom to read and to comment. And you have every freedom to disagree. You have every freedom to reject a book, to discuss a book, to criticize a book. But you don't have the freedom to burn the book and to ask the government to ban the book. That is where this whole problem comes about, the suppression of freedom. Yes, in Urdu particularly, because a lot of Urdu writers happen to be Muslim women, they are under a kind of double pressure, because there are, Muslim religion, it is not the mistake of the religion itself, but certain sections and practitioners of the religion, certain propagators of the religion are trying to create an atmosphere of intolerance and unfreedom. It is not there is nothing wrong with the Prophet. There is nothing wrong with the Quran, because the Prophet was all for the freedom of women. And even Parda, came from the desert life. In the desert, there would be the sandstorms and it is to save oneself from the sandstorms that both men and women covered their faces. Well, I am not going into all those details, but it is true that in Urdu there has been a kind of suppression and silencing, but as I said, it has also happened in other languages. It is happening in Malayalam now. We are now discussing a story, a novel by S. Harish, a young writer who was forced to withdraw his novel because he was cyber lynched and he was threatened with death and dire consequences if he continued with the novel. So it is happening everywhere, and unfortunately even in Kerala, which boasts of 10% literacy and progressive thought and all that, even in Kerala this has begun to happen, and this should make us all think and make us extremely anxious and concerned.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm Lashna of class 11E. You have already answered my question, which was about Ramayana. As this has been the month of Ramayana recital, how can we make it a secular epic, to borrow your own words, and what is its relevance in everyday life?
We need not make it a secular epic. Actually, it is a secular epic, as I said, because it is celebrated by the Muslims in Malaysia and Indonesia and in Sumatra and Java. It is celebrated by Buddhists in different parts of the world because there is a Buddhist Ramayana, there is a Jain version. So obviously it is not the property of a particular religion. It belongs to the entire humanity ultimately, and particularly to South Asia. It is a South Asian tradition. If you have read, you know, the person who has done the greatest research, the biggest and the deepest research in Ramayana happens to be a Christian priest. You know his name? He was a Belgian priest, if you want a clue. Well, his name was Father Kamil Bulke. Father Kamil Bulke's book, Ram Katha, originally written in Hindi because he came to India, studied Hindi and studied the entire tradition of the story of Ram across the country, among the tribal people, among Muslims, among Hindus, among Buddhists and Jains, etc. And he wrote this huge book called Ram Katha, which is now available in English, which is now available also in Malayalam. There is a Malayalam translation published by the Kerala Sahitya Academy under the title Rama Katha. That was the first well-researched book on Ramayana. This itself proves, you know, it was done by a Christian priest, a missionary, a Belgian missionary called Kamil Bulke. So he was the first to do this extensive research on Ramayana. And the second greatest scholar, Kamil Bulke is no more alive, but the greatest living scholar of Ramayana, again, is a Christian, if you want to go by religion. Even though I wouldn't like to go by religion, I would like to go by the scholarship. But that is again Paula Richman, who is a very close friend of mine, an American scholar who has edited 3 books on Ramayana. And her book, Ramayana, a South Asian tradition, was again something like Ramakatha. She was speaking about different South Asian Ramayanas. Not only she was speaking, but that is where many articles on Ramayana appeared, including the article I referred to by A.K. Ramanujan called 300 Ramayanas. And that was followed by questioning Ramayanas. I mean, the various Ramayanas where the so-called original Ramayana was questioned from various points of view. Because there is a Telugu Ramayana written from the point of view of Sita. And do you know there is a Malayalam poem which is also written from the point of view of Sita, who questions Rama? Who is the poet and what is the poem? A well-known Malayalam poet, one of the greatest Malayalam poets. Yes. No, I wanted the students to answer. I know you know that. Is there a student who can answer what is the name of the poem and who is the poet? The poet is Kumar and Ashan, who is one of our ever-time greatest poets. And the name of the poem, it is a monologue, is Chindavishtayaya Sita. Sita, who is thinking about the injustice that was done to her by Rama when she was exiled into the forest, when she was carrying his child. So she questions Rama's sense of dharma or sense of justice in that poem. And we have And so like that. So a rich man looks at several such Ramayanas. There is also a Telugu Ramayana, a folk Ramayana, which is again written from the point of view of the women in the Ramayana, questioning the men and the gender prejudice in Ramayana. So there are many. And there are also anti-Ramayanas. Again, there is a Telugu Ramayana. It's of course, maybe I will be killed if I just take its name. It is called Ramayana Vishavriksha. Ramayana as a poisonous tree. It is also written by a woman because she questioned again Rama's sense of justice. So what I mean to say is that you may agree, you may disagree with all these, but there are many Ramayana. There is a Ramayana where Sita is Ravana's daughter. There is another Ramayana where Sita is Rama's sister. So there are various kinds of Ramayanas in which even the relationships are different. As I said, there are Ramayanas where there is no war between Rama and Ravan. So Paula Richman's second book deals with all these interrogating Ramayana. Ramayanas which question Rama, which are written from different points of view. And her third book deals with the contemporary writers who have dealt with Ramayana theme. There is a translation of Chiddavishtayaya Sita there, done by, one of my young friends, because I was her PhD guide. She has translated that poem into English. And there is a poem by my poem also there in that third book by Paula Richman, where I speak about the Ravana's love as a genuine love for Sita, and he goes to heaven. He goes to heaven even according to Ramayana, because even Rama, if you have read even Tunja Thezhuthachan's Malayalam Adhyatma Ramayana, one of the most brilliant speeches that Rama makes in the course of Ramayana is a speech in praise of Ravana. After killing Ravana, of course he had to kill Ravana because of his own sense of dharma and justice and all that. But then after that, he praises Ravana like anything, because Ravana was a great devotee of Shiva. He was a bhakta. He was a devotee of Shiva. He was a great musician. He was a great vainik. He played veena. He was a master of veena, and he was a great scholar according to tradition. And in the Tamil Ramayana by Kamba, the Kamba Ramayana, there is a translation in Malayalam, a partial translation, and a full translation is just being done by one of our great poets, Mathew Ravivarma, straight from Tamil. And earlier, Dr. S.K. Nair has done a partial translation of the Balakanda of Kamba Ramayana. And in Kamba Ramayana, again, Ravana is the hero, not Rama. And in many of the North Indian versions of performed Ramayana, which is performed there, Ravana is and the best actor acts the part of Ravana, not of Rama. Because Rama is a very passive, colorless and insipid character in those Ramayana. But Ravana is, he is a hero. He's the real hero, and he's a fighter, valiant, he's a musician, he's a lover, he's all kinds of things. And so the best actor plays Ravana and not Rama. I am not taking sides. I am only just objectively telling you, about the various readings and interpretations of Ramayana. So there are these various versions of Ramayana, and perhaps it is by understanding this multiple tradition that we will be able to restore the secular nature of Ramayana. If somebody is trying to turn it into a holy book of a particular religion, you should not only say it is a secular epic, you should point to this. Ask them to read Father Kamil Bulke's Ramakatha. Ask them to read these 3 books edited by Paula Richman. Ask them to read the Vayanadan Ramayana, which has been recently published, or the Mappila Ramayana, which also has been recently published in Malayalam. And then they will know that, it belongs to all religions. It is an epic. It's a great poem. And if and you also ask what we have to learn from Ramayana. That depends on how we read Ramayana, how we look at Ramayana. Because Rama, in many Ramayanas, Rama is presented as what is called Maryada Purushottam. Maryada Purushottaman. That is the best of human beings who believes in dharma. And even his, exiling Sita into the forest is justified as Rajadharma, because he was a king. He had to be seen as being the example of the greatest dharma. And of course, one can question that. I would also question that. But then, well, that is how he is seen. Well, so one can look at, even Gandhi, for example, used the word Rama Rajya. And he used it in a particular sense. Not that Gandhi Gandhi excused Rama for everything that he did. But Rama Rajya, he used as a kind of metaphor. Not for a country in the past, but for the country that we have to build in the future. A country where people are equal, where people have freedoms, all kinds of freedoms which are guaranteed, like those guaranteed by our constitution. A country of equality, where nobody starves, where nobody is oppressed or persecuted. So one can read Ramayana from that point of view also, and have a particular understanding of what is called dharma, even though that word has been interpreted and misinterpreted in various kinds of fashions. So there are things to be learned if you read Ramayana from a very human perspective. You will be able to read Ramayana and learn lessons about justice and injustice, lessons about morality and immorality, lessons about how a country should be ruled. For example, in Valmiki Ramayana, I'll stop with that. There is a context where Lakshmana visits Rama when he is living in the forest with Sita. For the first time, they together went to, Sita wanted to revisit the forest, and they together go to the forest. And then the first question that Rama in Valmiki Ramayana asks Lakshmana is, are the Charvaks happy? And who were these Charvaks? Charvaks were a sect of philosophers who did not believe in God. They were atheists. They were against the idea of God. They said there is no God. And Rama asked Lakshmana, the first question he asked is not about his followers, not about the people in his court, but those who opposed him and those who even opposed the very idea of God. Are they happy? Because, so that is an extremely meaningful gesture. Because the duty of a government or a state is to ask, not to ask, is the majority happy, but is the minority happy? And that is what Gandhi also said. I will look at everything. I will look at development from the point of view of the poorest person in India. I will not look at it from the point of view of Adani or Ambani. I would look at it from the point of view of the poorest person in India. And that is exactly, so that is also a lesson, for example, that one can learn from Ramayana. Because he was concerned with people who differed from him, who opposed him, and protecting the opposition, giving the opposition the chance and the freedom to critique the government. That is in fact one of the basic principles of democracy.